Hello everyone and welcome back to Fire Emblem Aletheia, a Fire Emblem 8 ROM hack by, I was about to say by Serini, it's by Epicure, not Serini. And today we're going to talk about the units and just share my overall thoughts, feelings, and general feedback on the hack. I feel like it's been a while since I've done one of these, where we kind of go unit by unit. I like making these videos, I know a lot of people like watching them, so I'm looking forward to doing this. So we got the whole crew here, minus Tin. We'll talk about Tin separately. But what I want to do first is just share my broad strokes of how I feel about the hack. Overall, I think this is a great first draft. I think that you have a pretty clear design philosophy. I think the maps have like generally pretty good incentives to move forward a lot of the time. I think the only two that didn't really have anti-turtles were the fog map and the opener. So the opener and the closer. The others all had something pushing me forward, which is really, really important to making your maps have a sense of urgency and keeping the player engaged. So kudos to that. I think probably the areas where you need to do the most work, and some of this is going to go without say, like, I think the text is like fairly unpolished. I think it just looks it just is a little rough to read right now, given that the line breaks are a little strange, so just watch out for that. The general like grammar and flow, like the ellipsis with no space, it just doesn't look like it should. Like, it's easy to tell that this is a ROM hack, and I get that it's early stage, but just something to consider as you continue developing, and before you get too far and it becomes like a mountain of work, you may want to consider fixing some of that stuff. The map aesthetics, I think, could use a little bit of work too, but totally get it. This is the first draft, I'm assuming, of a lot of them, so I expect that they'll be improved over time. But functionally, they're great. Like, I didn't really take many issues with the maps. I would say my favorite map, definitely the Gaiden with the running caravans. That was probably the most fun and the most unique map that I've played. I think Souls of the Forest is the only one that's really done something similar with like the runaway thieves in a Gaiden chapter. And so the runaway tents was a pretty unique idea. The enemy placement there was excellent. The archer boss was scary. It was very cool, very memorable chapter. I would say the other chapters that kind of stood out to me, Chapter 5 was one of the better ones too, with the way the pressure kind of came from behind and the ballista, and you just had like these different angles to work with. Like, there was a lot I wanted to do up front. The map kind of like flattened out a little bit in the middle and then picked up towards the end, but I think it was probably one of the strongest. I would say the weakest maps, I think the opener needs a bit of work because of the way it's laid out, like I said in that video, where the player kind of doesn't have enough units to do everything they need to do. Tin makes a really poor impression because he can't really do too much. And you kind of have to like choke out in specific points, and then it's just like bait and switch. Not the best experience. I think there's just like some minor tweaks you can do to the enemy placement that would make that chapter a lot better. Like, some of the enemies are too clustered and then others are too spread out. I think that's kind of just like a general theme with some of the enemy placement that you've done, is that sometimes it feels like a huge rush and I have to panic and everyone's clustered together, and then other times it's like there's no one to be found. So it's very like hot and cold with its enemy placement. So I would just like reevaluate as you're playtesting again and see, can I split these guys up a little bit more to make the flow of enemies a bit more even throughout? And even if like, yeah, like sometimes the players should be under more pressure than others, that's totally fair. But just consider like the high pressure versus the low pressure, and I feel like the delta between the two shouldn't be as great as it feels right now in some of the maps. The other chapter that I would say probably needs the most work is the Defend map, which I believe was chapter 3. Because I just feel like the space, it's a little big, and there's a lot of space that doesn't get utilized super well. That one tile choke along the bottom's a little annoying to deal with, and the way the reinforcements come in is not ideal. Like, I felt like it was really more just like a rush to the boss, and less of like properly defending anything. So kind of the same thing with pressure. Like defend maps are hard to get right, and it's going to take a couple iterations to like really nail it. But I think there's some work that can be done on like the general layout and the flow of the map that'll help improve it overall. So yeah, I would say 4X, definitely the best. 1 and 3, probably the worst. And then I would put Chapter 5 at my number 2 slot, and then I'd probably put Chapter 2 at the number 3 slot, and then this last one in the middle at number 4. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Wait, Chapter 3... No, Chapter 3 wasn't the Defend map. I don't even remember Chapter 3. I forget which one that was. Oh, Chapter 3 was the Escape. The Escape was really good. I would put the Escape at number 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, I like the Escape map quite a lot, actually. Good Escape map. So I'd probably do 4X, 3, and then Chapter 5. Yeah. 4X, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4, 1 would be my order if I had to rank the chapters from my favorite to least favorite. Sorry, that was a little convoluted. Writing. I like that your approach is very minimalist. You don't waste a lot of time on dialogue. Your focus is clearly on the maps and the gameplay, which I think is where it should be at this stage in your development. I think I'm still like trying to figure out what's going on. And I think like what might confuse someone who's like just picking this up is they're like, it's not like there's nothing to the point where it's like, okay, like the story just hasn't been inserted yet. There's like enough that like the player might think is like this all the story has to offer. And while that may not be your emphasis, the way it's written might indicate that like this is all they're getting. So you'll probably want to go back and make some tweaks to it over time and just make some bits a little bit more clear. Like I actually kind of forgot like who we were and why we were fighting at different points until like Calcus had his conversation. Like I felt like there was more talking between the bosses and the player units than there was like in game, which is interesting. It's a different take. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just something that like some players will be put off by. I'm not like super big into story. Like I'd rather like minimal story than offensive story. I thought some of the moments were good, like Theo just chiming in and then the fog just shows up. Like that was brilliant. That was really funny. Serene, like I was saying before, seems like a fine Lord character. She reminds me a lot of Guide and Alm. Just like go, 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 push, 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 push. A little bit of that shred of humanity. I definitely would like to see more of the dynamics with her and like the cast a bit. They all kind of feel just like, I feel like there's more that can be done with their characters to make me care about them each a little bit more. But it's early, and those are things you could always add in later, and that'll be a nice touch in future versions. Not something I would drop everything to do right at this moment. So now that we've spent 8 minutes talking about kind of the overall bits of the hack, let's get into character, shall we? So here's Serene. Probably, if I had to do a tier list, it'd probably be Zoe and Serene in the 1-2 slot. Serene's really good. Her skill is super busted. Gets a lot of extra AS when she's just a notch below 100, and like she can level up HP and get it and access it, which is pretty sick. So she's like very consistently one-rounding. I feel like I got a bit blessed with her stats. Like she's very defensive. She's pretty tanky for a peg. Really fast. Pretty well-rounded. Really enjoyed using her. Sword pegs are great. The Levin sword I've clearly gotten a good workout in with. I have to be mindful of archers and ballista, but dismount helps with that. Fun unit. Like really good lord design, I would say. Maybe a little too buff, but I think I also just got lucky. Ballistician, it's Abby. Her strength cap being 10 kind of sucks as I look at it. I'm curious like how she'll scale with like her kind of like crappy growths besides skill. I think Ballista is going to be one of those things that are really hard to balance over time and like something you're always going to need to account for because it's such a powerful and unique tool. So that's going to be something you'll have to wrestle with as you continue on with developing the hack. Her having such high defense does feel a little strange. Like, I feel like I should be punished more for leaving her out in the front. Like you saw in the last chapter, it was pretty easy for me to like lead with Abby and have her sponge hits. So I question if like her being like second in bulk to Calcus at this point in the game makes the most sense. She's very slow and she can't take magic hits, so she does have that drawback. But I feel like I should be punished more for being as aggressive with her as I am. I'm just curious how she'll be balanced overall. I think it's a really interesting idea to introduce a ballistician, but I think there's a clear reason why Intelligence Systems abandoned the class. Pretty hardcore. They know it's really busted. I think the other thing too is just like make it so that like her quick rain won't break like by the middle of the second chapter she's in. You might want to just give like a weaker ballista that she can use, kind of like how the Stone Hoist is in the Arcanea games, where it's just, you know, your run-of-the-mill like 50 use ballista or whatever, just something for her to do. And then the quick rain's like a little bit more of like the superior kill option. Something to consider, but just like running out of weapon uses early on kind of sucks. Especially when I don't know when I'll get another one, so she might be out of commission for a while. Zoe, I've definitely had my reservations about Zoe, but I think the way that I've come to think about Zoe, and I'm curious what your feelings are, Epicure, on this, but like, besides, after like chapter 2, I felt like I didn't really want her to chip. There was just so much going on, I just needed her to kill things. And she's very good at killing things. She's got decent enough res to deal with mages. She's fast enough to never get doubled. It's a different take on a Jagan for sure. I'm curious how you'll introduce another archer that will feel worth using. I mean, bows are going to be very good anyway, so I think that'll solve itself. But still, I find Mercy to be just a little too clean. It's like very easy to chip with. It's like when Pokemon introduced False Swipe and it was like, really, you're going to let me get this guy down to 1 HP whenever I want, as long as it hits. Like, Mercy's kind of like that. It kind of makes things a little, in some ways, less natural, and maybe that's just me not being crazy about Mercy as a skill. But it works, and like, it's easy enough to ignore. It's probably one of the better ways to like counterbalance like a Jagan with innate crit by just giving the player the option to be like, I want to set this up for a chip kill if I can. So I'm still iffy on it, but you're making it work. It's not what I would do personally, but it totally works. Like, don't feel like you need to change anything. Zoe's fine as she is. She's really strong. Really, really strong. Maybe gets the killer bow a little too early, but whatever, it's fine. It's kind of helpful. Theo. Theo is my favorite. Like, a fighter with certain blow is pretty sick. He's got great strength, he's got great skill, great con, doesn't get doubled very often. When he does double, it's fantastic. He's just a very, like, precise axe user and very top heavy. Great for setting up kills. Great for one-hitting things. I'd argue that the enemies probably get one hit in this hack just a little too much, and Theo, along with Calculus, are probably the two that are most guilty of like the hit it and quit it. One hit and they're done. And that might happen a little too much this early in the hack. But given like the quantity of enemies, I kind of feel like it's necessary. So again, like, still kind of getting my bearings in the hack. It's still pretty short, but something you may want to consider depending on like the pace of the game you want to set. Theo was really good. He like completely outclassed Curry. I wanted him to use all the axes. I was very comfortable feeding him kills. Fun unit. Definitely a unique take on the axe fighter. Filna. I liked Filna. Sword Troops are really fun. I like her gimmick of having like really low magic and actually being kind of decent in combat considering her class. Like she was doing pretty steady damage with the Iron Sword, especially against like mages and the like. Having dismount, I think, kind of makes her a bit more interesting too for the indoor map. So like, if and when you introduce a priest, I think it'll be good juxtaposition for whenever there are indoor maps, like whether you want to use one or the other. Having her use swords just helps her a lot. Like, it was fun feeding my healer kills when I had the chance to. So, overall, fun unit. She heals. She uses swords. Something's got to be fixed, though, with this knight class, because everyone's capping. It's super weird. But, yeah, not too much else to say on Phil. Her low, like, the zero magic, like, I think you could get the same thing across with just, like, less magic. Like, this is, like, one of those, like, moments where it's, like, extreme. Like, yeah, she's bad at healing. It's like, well, does she really need zero magic? Alright, we're back. My new video got cut off there for a sec. I'll probably, like, try and edit these together somehow. Sorry about that. But, yeah. That was, it's my take on Filna. I'm just gonna switch off my game controller right now, because it's gonna keep working me. But anyway, Filna was solid. She heals. Not much else to say. I don't think you really have much to change with her. Curry, the worst unit. Easily the worst unit in the game. Force skill is just too low. His hit rates are really dodgy, even at things he's supposed to be good against. Like, he's barely landing 80s on lance users. He's, like, completely helpless against sword units, and, like, anything he's neutral against, he's like in the 60-70 range. He's just very shaky. A little too shaky. And when you have someone that's like Theo has way better strength. Constantly at like 100 or 90 hit. And isn't that much slower? Like, compare these two. Like, look how much like better Theo is. 14, 16, 10, 10, 11, 4, 12. I mean, Theo's also, like, double his level at this point, but, like, that kind of makes my argument a little bit moot, but his skill is so low that it made him hard to do anything with. So you may want to just consider buffing it just a little bit, or maybe the hit on axes or something. I don't know. But Theo just, like, totally outclasses him, and it's not like he has, like, any potential. His growth rates are really low across the board, so I don't really feel like there's an incentive for me to try and use him, because he's not really good at base, and he doesn't grow up to be anything special. I think better bases, better skill and luck bases would help him out tremendously. I think the speed differential is good to differentiate him from Thea, that, like, this guy's going to double a little bit more at the expense of some reliable hit, but he also needs, like, to actually be able to hit things so that it's a worthwhile trade-off. Because so far, it kind of felt like Theo was just, like, better at doing everything that Curry could do. Wemble. I don't like that he got one hit by the Ballista. His bulk is very, very weak. Even just, like, an extra point of defense or two might help. But he's fast, he's powerful, he's good. Pretty, like, classic speedy monk type. The way he's written with, like, his, like, I love to kill and I'm a priest, it's a little cheeky. Not my favorite. Something you may want to consider with, like, how he enters the story. Like, writing-wise, I'm just like, oh, Wemble. But I'm sorry, that was mean. Yeah, there's just, like, I just feel like his character just feels a bit little tropey. But as a unit, he's great. Good, like, I like that he's frail, but very quick. Very glassy mage character. Not too much else to say on him. Quick Burn's a fun skill to use in a class like this. It's well suited for, I think, what you're trying to do with him. Calcus. Calcus is another favorite. I mean, he's a teal armor knight. I'd argue that he's just a little too buff. Like, Theo was one-hitting stuff. Calcus was, like, really one-hitting stuff. Deathblow's very buff. He's got great defense. Like, holy crap. He's a very solid armor knight. Like, this is a good way to do armor knights. I think I would probably either like lower the amount of points that Deathblow does, so he's not like one-hitting things as often. But he's very strong. Fun unit to use. Speed is passable right now. I'm sure he'll start to slow down a bit as the game progresses, quite literally. But really good unit. Good Armor Knight. I like giving the Armor Knight. I like that you gave him a player phase-oriented skill, and that it made him better at attacking up front, because that's what the Armor Knight should be doing, right? Attacking on that turn. So I like that. Good stuff. Not too much else to say on him. Love the palette. Romeo, I didn't really get a chance to use him much, but he's okay. He's a thief. Super fast, like overkill speed. Everything else is kind of weak, but he's a thief. He does thiefy things. Canto Plus will make up for his bad stats. He's got steal, he's got cunning, he doesn't even need lockpicks. He's fine. I don't really have much else to say on him. Didn't get a chance to use him too much. So that's pretty much it with this. Not really much else to say on the characters. 6 chapters, or I guess 7. Sorry, I'm yawning. 7 chapters is like, I have a decent feel for the hack and how it's going to be going. Hard to give like a really thorough analysis of how each unit performed. Tin's the only other one. Tin just makes a bad impression up front, and then he became more useful. I think he probably would have been deployed had I not let him die. He would have been good on the caravan map for sure. He probably also would have been good on that Fort Seas map. But I think just make the first chapter a little bit more conducive to let Tin show off his strengths, so that the player gets a better impression of him, because I certainly thought he was crappy up front. I would say Tin and Curry are probably in the biggest need of a buff. And I would say enemies probably need a little bit more HP. And Wemble needs just a touch more bulk so he doesn't get one hit. That's about all I could say on the balance right now. High level, beyond like what I've said in the moment. But overall, man, this is a really good start. It's a really good start. You should be proud of the work that you've done. It's exciting seeing like all the custom shit that you've added to the game, like the custom skills, and that you're also like working on staves and things like that. Like, I think this hack has a lot of potential to stand out and be really unique, and especially given that it's very TRS inspired, I think that it'll help. That alone, I think, will just like make it stand out. I think that maybe it'll get more people interested in tiering Saga. I don't know. Depends on your goal. But this was fun. Good little demo. I don't think you have too much polish work to do before you can continue on, honestly. I'm excited to see what's next, and I'll be sure to play it then. So for you viewers out there, definitely recommend you give this hack a try. It's certainly different. Hard mode is definitely doable. Give this man some feedback. Help him out. This is a cool project. The only other thing, Epicare, that I probably said already... Actually, I know I've said it already. Don't be afraid to add more characters. Add more characters up front. Like, this game has some pretty high-powered enemies. The player's likely to die, as you saw me die. Give them a little bit more of a cushion in the early chapters. I think you can definitely introduce some more interesting stuff up front to give me some different options. Or just the player some different options as well. And I think that'll help make an overall better package. But it's in a good place, man. Good demo. Alright, guys. My name is Pandan. This is Fire Emblem Aletheia, and that's a wrap on this Let's Play. Hope this playtest has been helpful for you, Epicure. I hope you, the viewer, have enjoyed this. And I'll see you guys for the next one. We'll let you know what that looks like. I have a couple ideas kicking around, but we'll see what sticks. Until then, be safe and enjoy your day.